This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome to Managing Holiday Challenges. I'm Megan Walsh, and I'm the Behavioral Health Manager at Encompass. I hear all the time from my team of therapists, as well as from the families that we serve, that the holidays are an incredibly stressful time for parents and caregivers, as well as children. And so we wanted to be able to offer some supports and understanding about the ways that we can reclaim our joy around the holiday season. So we'll start with a video just to bring a little bit of levity to what can be an incredibly challenging time.
We meet again.
Get ready to be totally stressed out,
Come on!
unappreciated,
What?
and ill-prepared.
Tell me you defrosted it.
No! It's our only option. Keep pushing!
It's the holidays. 'Tis the season to be jolly,
Okay, no.
despite nothing going your way.
I'm allowed. I just can't do it all.
You're a mom. You were made for this.
Somehow, you'll find a way to be merry. The holidays.
Mommy, what are you doing?
Coming way too soon.
So while that's a humorous take on the holiday season, I definitely see myself in a few of those things. And so we really wanted to start by setting the foundation and talk about why this season is so stressful. Some of you may be familiar with something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So this hierarchy is used to explain what humans need in order to grow and to develop. I recently came across this image of something called Kaufman's sailboat of needs. And it really helped me conceptualize the types of services that we needed to be offering to our families and to our community, and how we can help caregivers to understand where we need to put the majority of our energy in order for kids and families to thrive. During the pandemic, I've heard a lot of people say things like, we are all in this together. The reality is, though, that we are all in the storm together, but some of us are sailing on yachts, and some of us are in a solid speedboat. Some of us are furiously paddling a tiny canoe, and some of us are hanging on for dear life to a piece of ragged driftwood. And Kaufman's sailboat of needs helps us to really understand that in order to get to the places that we want to be, so those great ideas of purpose and love and exploration, we have to first get an airtight lock on safety. And that's where the emotional connection, self-esteem, self-worth, safety, both emotional and physical, need to come in. And that has to be cemented before we can get to any of those places. And during the holiday season, we often need and want to see an increase in socialization, friendliness, flexibility, frustration tolerance, and those are all located in the sail. And so until we get our boat to be secure, we're not going to see those things that we need to make the holiday season an enjoyable time. So we developed 4 steps to reclaim our holiday joy. They are preparation, expectations, grace, and completing our own stress cycle as the adults in the situation. So every parent has that anxious feeling on the way to a big holiday event. Maybe we want for our kids to enjoy the lights, candles, the gifts, the special food, and all those special people. We want them to have memories that are filled with magic and joy and love. We want our friends and our family members to see our amazing kids and be wowed by how wonderful they are, and maybe have even a fleeting thought about what a great parent we are. Many times, though, those high expectations lead to so much stress, tension, and disconnection. Instead of those dancing sugar plum fairies and enchanted warm fuzzies that we want them to be, sometimes the anxiety and tension can even become toxic stress, and the whole holiday season begins to feel really traumatic instead of joyful. So, to reclaim our holiday spirit, I usually encourage families to focus on these four main things: preparation, expectations, grace, and completing our own stress cycle. So, the first thing that we are going to look at is self care. And that's kind of a buzzword. People are sick of hearing about it. But the reality is, if we're not getting enough of these things, if we're not getting enough sleep and adequate nutrition and enough hydration and some fun and some balance in our life, then we're not going to be our best selves, and either are our kids. So, what we want to do is look at ways that we can incorporate self care into the holiday season. So, it's not just an additional thing that we're checking off. One of my favorite ways to do that is to incorporate it into my gift buying. So, maybe I'm going to offer cozy blankets or warm slippers or some fun bath items. And because I know I love to receive those things, and my kids do too often. So think about ways that you can build in the self care that you need into the holiday season, ways that you can take some time to be mindful about what you're doing and be in the moment. The other thing is, it's okay to limit yourself, and you don't have to do every event that comes your way. So we are going to help you decide how to do that, we are going to look at playing a game. One of my favorite ways to do it is play a game that I like to call What I Like and What's Hard, and where you say an event or an activity and then take turns with your kids or your family members talking about that activity and what you specifically like, what you specifically don't like, what makes the activity really difficult for you, and where you get joy. So, what I like and what's hard. And nobody gets in trouble for what they say. Nobody gets to have an opinion about what the other person says. It's just sharing information so that you, as a caregiver, can do some problem solving and decision making around that. So you can learn a lot about what challenges your family has when you really listen to the answers that they come up with, and when you listen to yourself about what brings you joy and what doesn't. I have a friend who tried this activity a couple of years ago, and they found out that it really stressed out one of her kids to wait for breakfast while their siblings opened their stockings. They usually had a tradition where everybody would come downstairs in the morning, they would do stockings, and then they would have cinnamon rolls for breakfast. And that child had a super hard time regulating her emotions when she was hungry. And so sitting calmly and waiting for her siblings to open their gifts and get things that maybe she liked, maybe she didn't, maybe she thought they deserved them, maybe she didn't. All of those things just set their child up for disaster. But once the child had shared that it was really hard to do that, then the parent was able to provide a protein snack for the child as soon as they came down the stairs. And that changed stocking time for everybody, and changed it from a time that mom didn't like, she just dreaded it every year because she knew that child was going to melt down. But as soon as she could really have a conversation about it and figure out what made it hard, then she could address the issue and change it. The other thing you want to think about with preparation is having an exit strategy. If you do say yes to an event that has the potential to be challenging, problem solve beforehand how you will leave, what you'll say to the host, how you'll communicate with each other that it's time to go. I always like to try to leave an event when things are still going well in order to give my kids the experience of successfully navigating the event and leave everybody looking forward to the next time that we get together. If you have a kiddo who fights leaving until they are in full meltdown mode, it can be helpful to plan to have something fun to do on the way home. Maybe you're going to stop for hot chocolate, or you're going to go for a drive to look at the lights. Whatever works to help your child feel like the fun isn't ending when they leave the party. One of my kids always feels a little bit more comfortable having a code word too, that they can say to me if they need a break or if they need to tell me something privately. This can help them really feeling comfortable getting the support that they need when other people are around and not having to wait until things are at a boiling point. So, what I would like everybody to do is to think about in your holiday planning, what are one or two events that you want to make sure that you keep? They're special to you, they're special to someone in your family. And what are one or two events that you feel like you could scrap? That you feel like maybe that doesn't bring us the joy that we want to. Everybody else seems to like driving around looking at Christmas lights, but maybe that's not something we like, or maybe it is. So just really start to look critically at the things that you do around the holidays and give yourself permission to maybe take one or two off the list. The next thing we're going to do in preparation is to make sure that we are getting what we need to help ourselves be the best that we possibly can. So another part of that is making sure that our neurotransmitters are as balanced as they can be. So neurotransmitters are basically the brain chemicals that help us be who we are in our mood. So it's not a replacement for medications if you've been prescribed them. There's no shame in that. This is in addition to doing what's recommended by your therapist or your doctor. And so the information on the screen right now really helps show us that we can be intentional about getting our brains the experiences that triggers the release of healthy brain chemicals. So if you notice yourself lacking in motivation, you may need a boost of dopamine. If you're feeling disconnected from people you care about, oxytocin may be what you need. If your self-esteem is low, serotonin may be something that you want. So how do we start to do that? We're going to take a look at that. So on your screen, you see that when we think about dopamine, we're going to look at things like meditation or prayer. We can do tangible things to organize ourselves, like make a to-do list and develop some long-term goals. You may want to eat some high-protein foods like beef or chicken, cheese, beans, and exercising regularly can be really helpful to increase your dopamine. And that is going to limit your procrastination. It's going to address low self-esteem, lack of motivation, low energy or fatigue, or an inability to focus, or maybe even feeling anxious and hopeless and having some mood swings. For oxytocin, we can increase our physical affection. Many times I'll talk with families about 20-second hugs. When we hug someone, or even when we hug ourselves, or actually, studies have shown even if you hug a tree for 20 seconds, it releases oxytocin in our brains. And that helps to address feelings of loneliness or stress, disconnect from relationships. And we can do those through that 20-second hug, physical touch, socializing, massage, acupuncture, listening to music, maybe a cold shower or meditation. All of those things help to release oxytocin. If you need some serotonin, that's addressed by getting outside and moving, having some sunlight, physical touch, and that's going to address low self-esteem, being overly sensitive or moody. Anxiety or panic attacks can be helped by this. And even some social phobias can be helped by increasing our serotonin. And endorphins help when we're feeling especially moody or in pain. We can boost those through emotional expression, crying or laughing, eating dark chocolate or spicy food, or doing some art. And so if you could pick one possible neurotransmitter deficiency you might be experiencing and select a couple of ways to increase this consistently this month, think about what that would be and maybe plan an afternoon filled with the ways that you can increase those levels. When I look at this, I kind of look across the board and I think, I could probably use a little bit of a boost of all of these things. And so maybe I might try to plan an afternoon where maybe I do some writing or some art. Maybe I am going to listen to some music while I do that. Maybe I will try to sit in the sun if it's sunny outside that day, or maybe I might need to use one of those artificial light lamps. And maybe I'll eat some spicy food while I do it. And so that kind of an afternoon, if you're being intentional about choosing things that are going to boost your brain chemicals and help you to have a better chance at being the best you can be in this situation, those are really the best ways to prepare. And then we're going to look at expectations. When we think about expectations, it's really important to be aware of mirror neurons. So our brains are designed to mimic the emotional states of those around us. And so when we're stressed, our kids are going to be stressed. It's important that we notice and address our well-being in order to be able to meet the expectations that we have of ourselves and our kids. So there's some really great ways to help your kids manage the sometimes unbearable anxiety about this season. And one of the most important ways is to normalize it. So it's important that we keep in mind that excitement and anxiety feel the same in the body. So just take a second to think about the signs of each of those things. When we feel excitement, we might feel butterflies in our tummy. We might feel a quickening heartbeat. Our breath might be faster. We might have trouble sleeping the night before because we're really excited. And for some people, feeling excited like this can trigger memories of other times they've felt especially anxious and bring back really hard reminders of those times. So normalizing the fact that our body feels the same way with excitement and with anxiety, and helping kids to tease out which of it they're feeling can be really helpful. And just normalizing that for them. Some of the ways that we can do this are really just being attuned and watchful of what's happening. If your kiddo is asking you lots of nonsense questions, things you've already answered 18 million times, having trouble sleeping or eating, they seem to have an unusual excess of energy or having a really hard time following instructions or complying with directions, all of these things can be signs of anxiety in kids. And sometimes this requires that we get really creative. I've known people who had a kiddo who was really worried he wouldn't get the present he desperately wanted, and he just could not focus on anything else. To alleviate the stress, the parents decided to go shopping with him, had him pick it out, let him hide it in the present spot. And yes, they didn't get the shocked look of surprise when he opened the gift, but they also didn't get the weeks of challenging behaviors due to the child's anxiety. I also have a friend who commonly does surprise Christmas a week or two before the actual day when she sees that her kids can't handle the anticipation anymore. One morning, the kids just wake up and surprise, it's Christmas. Then on Christmas Day, they do relaxing activities like movie marathons or hiking or reading books, whatever it is that they enjoy doing. But it doesn't necessarily have to be on that specific day. So if it's making your kids through the roof anxious, maybe it's time to switch up how you do things. Another issue that comes up around expectations is having some anxiety around the ways that kids respond to the gifts that they get. And I've had families come in and say, oh my goodness, my child was so rude to their grandparents, and then that just threw everything off for the whole day. And often it's really hard for kids to even understand how what they say impacts others. And so they don't really understand that people put a lot of effort into the gifts sometimes. So one of the things I really like to do is to role play opening gifts before you do it in front of others. Make it playful, make it silly. You might wrap up some silly items from around your house. I've done wrapping with toilet paper or tin foil. You don't have to spend a lot of money on wrapping paper. You can just use what you have around the house. Maybe it's a towel that's tied around to some sort of gift. And then you take turns opening the gift, being honest. We're not wanting to teach our kids not to be honest about it, but figuring out creatively how they can be thankful for the gift, how they can say thank you and find something to say about the item. So you want to make the items as goofy as possible in order to keep everyone relaxed and fun. This isn't about applying pressure and making kids respond in a certain way. It's giving them experience of getting creative around gift giving and reducing the anxiety around that. So, for example, I might wrap up a cheese grater in toilet paper or tinfoil, and I might be able to unwrap it and say, wow, this wrapping paper is so shiny. And then you open it and it's a cheese grater. And I might say, how did you know that I love cheese? Thank you so much. So, helping kids to get creative, reduce the anxiety, and be silly and be connected with you is going to help kids learn how to do this in an appropriate way. I have read several studies that say that kids learn 400 times faster through playfulness than they do when we just lecture them. So if you're trying to teach a lesson, use playfulness to get your point across much quicker and much easier. In addition, if you have a kiddo that struggles behaviorally, their anxiety can be escalated by the additional focus on being good because Santa is coming. I've known kids who were constantly worried that they aren't being good enough, and then that leads to a negative spiral of shame and then more difficult feelings and behaviors. And this can sometimes be handled by letting kids have a really tiny gift each day and some words of praise and encouragement. So maybe they get a little container of mints and you just say, wow, it is so, you are doing such a great job. You are such a great kid, letting them know that they have value each and every day. And maybe it's just a piece of gum or some Play-Doh or an encouraging note, anything that you can do to give them tangible proof leading up to the holiday season that they are doing okay. It's really important that we remember to help them feel worthy. Their behavior is how they're communicating their needs. It is not who they are. And we want to really seek to support kids in who they are and who they can become. It can be really helpful to try to get extended family and friends in on this too, if you're going to go this route, because they could unintentionally really sabotage the work you're doing in trying to get your kids help with managing their big feelings. So let family and friends in on it if you are going to go a different route than having them really focus on being good because Santa's coming. So another thing is expect what's been given in the past. So if you are worried about going to a family member's home and things have been rocky there in the past, if you can address any relationship issues before the holiday, that can be really helpful in addressing things. But the best way to go into it is expecting what you have seen happen before. If you build yourself up and have expectations that things are going to be different than that, you are likely going to be disappointed and you're going to have unmet expectations. And then that leads to you not being your best self in that moment. So expect what you have seen before in a given situation and try to use preparation for getting around any of those things that don't feel acceptable to you. And then when we've done a lot of the work around preparation and expectations, at the end of the day, we still need to just be okay with things not being perfect. They really shouldn't be perfect. We're all human, and sometimes we just have to let things be what they are. Sometimes the best memories end up being laughing about remembering the year that a bat lived in the Christmas tree. That actually did happen at my house one year. It may be that we laugh about the year that the candles fell out of the menorah and caught the tablecloth on fire. You know, the things that mess up often are what we remember, and they're what give us a little giggle from years to come. So we can really benefit from giving ourselves and our loved ones a little more grace. The last step in this is in reclaiming your holiday joy is making sure that you're consistently completing your stress cycle. And so it's important that we're able to pull apart the stressor, the thing that made you feel stressed, from the stress. And I'm going to explain this because it can get kind of confusing. So I want everybody to think about one thing that you're feeling stressed about during the holiday season. So in order to differentiate, stressors are what activates the stress response in your body. So they could be something that you see, hear, smell, touch, taste, or even imagine could do you harm. So something that you experience or something that you imagine experiencing. That's the stressor. So the thing that happened or could happen. The stress is the neurological and physiological shift. So what happens in your brain and your body when you encounter one of these threats? So the stress response is when we go into fight, flight, or freeze. So the stressor is the thing that happened or could happen. The stress is the neurological thing that happens in your brain and your body when those happen. And we have to differentiate because often when we remove ourselves from the stressor, the thing that happened, we get confused about why we're still dealing with stress. And we feel like, oh, well, the situation is over, so we don't have to deal with the stress. But the reality is we have to complete the stress cycle. We have to remove the stress from our body in ways that work for us. And it's going to be very different for everybody. So we're going to look at and choose from the evidence-based strategies that help us complete the stress cycle. And the important thing to remember with this is that it's important to think of a way to exert yourself, and I'll go into that, and pair it with some sort of connection. So you're going to exert yourself either physically or emotionally, pair it with connection, and that equals building resilience. And that is what will help you get through the holiday season and be able to have some joy in that, is the resilience. So we're going to look at physical activity, and this can be any sort of physical activity. It doesn't have to be extreme, and it can be anything that's about 20 minutes a day. It doesn't have to be in one fell swoop. You can do it in 5-minute chunks throughout the day, but some sort of physical activity. Breathing, doing some deep breathing. You can do silly breathing with your kids. You can look up hot chocolate breathing. That can be really fun to do in the holiday season. But really focusing on having your exhale be longer than your inhale. Our bodies are created in a way that does not allow ourselves to stay in a really stressed state if we are breathing like that. So breathe in and then breathe out longer than you breathed in. So exhale is longer than inhale, will help to decrease stress in your body. Positive social interaction is another one. And this can be with people, it could be with pets, it could be online, or it can be in person, but positive social interaction. And then laughter is another great one. Affection and crying. Creative expression is another one, a way to connect with ourselves, connect with our talents. And so if you can think of one way that you might exert yourself, so that could be the physical activity, it could be breathing, it could be laughter. It's got to be strong laughter. It can't be just like a light giggle. It could be affection, it could be crying. Those are all ways to exert ourselves. And then we're going to pair it with some sort of connection. Again, connection to our pets, connection to other people, connection to ourselves, or creative expression and connecting to our art. So I would love for everybody to just pick one of those and pair it and think about how you can build resilience and complete your stress cycle. And it's important that you do this whenever you experience strong feelings of stress. So when you notice yourself reacting either emotionally or physically, or you have a stressful experience, pair that physical activity of some sort or exertion of some sort with connection, and that will lead to resilience. We've included in your packet that's attached to this video a worksheet for you to do some planning around this so that you can really take some time to be intentional, think it through, and be able to build your best plan and be your best selves for the holiday season. And we wish you all the best. Please know Encompass is here for you, and we will be continuing to offer monthly workshops and groups for both kids and caregivers.